Yeah! Woo! Disclosure team, baby. You know what's going down. I'm DJ from Calling All Beings, but here I'm ready to shout out the host of this program. You know what I'm talking about? We're talking about, you know what? I want to can I get a witness for Sheffield, UK's own Mr. Vinnie Adams? Yes!
Dude.
Amen. For Vinnie Adams and UAP Media UK, we talking about Vinnie, Andy, Dan, Graham, and Dave. And let me tell you something, people. They're not playing, man. They're not playing. They're going to bring disclosure, okay, to the UK. These guys are not playing around. Grassroots movement. And shout out to the UAP, the UFO Twitter UK homies. So we're talking about Ryan Davies. We're talking about Marco Boyle. Andreas, what's up, brother? We're talking about Divine Daisy Girl Ashley from Liverpool and Hampshire's own Stevie Keith 9. What's up? Vinny's not the only one with blonde hair, baby, because I got some too. How you like me now? All right, no, the real me's coming back. Okay, real me.
Oh man, that was incredible. Right. Listen,
this is real me, bald and in style.
That was incredible, man. Thank you. Thank you for being here, man. How are you?
Thank you, brother. I'm very happy to be here. It's not often that people actually want to put up with me on air. I think Luis and the Big Phone Home 2 are the only people who've really wanted to put up with me on air. So thank you for the invitation.
Hey, man, no, my pleasure, man. I think the first time I was aware of you was the Big Phone Home 2, seeing you on that panel. I was like, this guy's incredible. He's got such a great background. And before we go any further, I've got to say happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. So thank you for your service, DJ, and to all my other veteran friends and every other veteran out there. We respect you and thank you for your service. So yeah, thank you so much, man.
Including the RAF brothers. Y'all know me from the 15th SOS, right? What's up, squadron leader? I know you guys. So I had a couple of brothers from there, Simon Clokey, and Rich Waller, and a couple other guys. And Mark Cable. We can't forget about the first UK pilot we ever had, Mark Cable from the 47 Squadron. What's up?
There we go, man. I think over here it's Remembrance Day. So to everyone in the UK, happy Remembrance Day. You know, we've got to show our respect to all these people that did what they did. So, yeah, thank you, everybody. Woo.
Yeah.
All right, I'm still buzzing off that intro, man.
Namaste. Inhale, Vinny. Urdhva. Okay, we're not going to do yoga now, but we can do an online yoga later on. That's later on.
That sounds good, man. I'm guessing you've already done your yoga for the day. Am I right?
Oh, I did yoga. I went in the water, swam, did a little open water swimming, and then I need to do something to get ready for you, man.
Man, bless you. Thank you so much. But listen, this is going to be one of those conversations where we just let the conversation flow and it goes where it goes, you know. But as far as people finding out about you, let's go back to where it all started. I mean, not literally where it all started, but your early experiences. And I believe you had a sighting at quite an early age. Do you mind talking about that?
Yeah, I was on my parents' ranch in suburban New York, in Peekskill, New York, rural area, and a friend of mine and I. There was another 14-year-old. We were walking home, and we're sort of down in a valley, so we're sort of looking up at basically the horizon was formed by the tree line that it was up above, and we're walking uphill to the street so I could cross the street and go home where my home was across from the ranch. And we're walking. It's a Sunday night in Peekskill, and all of a sudden I see something rise above the tree line. It could have come overhead, and I didn't see it over my head. But by the time I saw it, it was above that tree line, right above the horizon. And it rose up above the horizon and was lit up with all these different colors, completely silent. And I was sitting there going, holy shit, this looks like a Close Encounters of the Third Kind shit. But there's no music playing. You know what I mean? It was like there's no noise. Yeah, there's no noise. I mean, the best stories I've heard out there are like Andy and Luis Jimenez have Andy McGrillen, chilling with McGrillen. And those guys have great stories. This thing sort of floated away, and it floated over in the direction of where James Iandoli's from, Mohegan Lake. over near Yorktown Heights, and Yorktown Heights was. There's some great narratives in the Hudson Valley UFO books about the Yorktown Heights police officers phoning in triangular craft. I saw a rear aspect, so I did not see the shape. I
Right.
saw something that lit up the sky, totally silent, not the Goodyear blimp over Peekskill on a Sunday night with no football game, especially since, football was probably a good 60 miles away in Jersey. So anyway, so that's what happened. And that was probably the first time that I started thinking about beyond the mathematical equation of, wow, there must be something else in the universe, something you probably thought about, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, of course.
Right.
But
Other than that, yeah.
You say that it was quite lit up, and
Mm-hmm.
could it have been a triangle, like looking from the back, just seeing that flat edge, or could it have been a disc?
Well, I don't want to put anything into the story that I didn't see or don't remember.
Sure.
And couldn't. And rear aspect meant that I'm seeing it floating away, so I'm not seeing the dimension of it where I could get underneath and do one of these and see what shape that craft was, or see or get any information like that. I just saw kind of a very, very bright, kind of like different color lights, and just like, holy shit, dude, there's a UFO. So I found this gentleman, Kenny Good, after 20. I never told my mother, never told my father, never told my brother, never told my wife, didn't tell anybody, because we agreed right there that if we're having a sleepover, and I was like, if I tell, my father's gonna think I'm lying or making it up, and I don't want to be made a fool of. So let's just not talk about it. It was very difficult to kind of get to sleep that night, thinking about it, and I didn't talk about it until about 2010. When I was just 1 year from retiring from the Air Force. I called Kenny from Facebook. I got his number. And I said, hey, dude, within a minute of being on the phone, I was like, hey, dude, did that happen? Like, did I dream that? He goes, no, man, that happened. That totally happened.
And so, in relation, sorry, go on. No.
Well, just to finish it up, I ended up, I was doing an MMA pod. I've been podcasting about MMA for probably like 11 years.
No way.
On and off. Yeah. So I was doing an MMA podcast, and we started talking about Dave Fravor. And just in the middle of talking about Dave Fravor with my two co-hosts, MMA co-hosts, I just started talking about my experience for the first time.
Wow.
And it's like coming out of the closet. So the next episode, I called Kenny Good, and I had him on the old MMA show to talk UFOs. And then it wasn't long after that, I just switched formats, met Nathan, and started calling all beings.
That's incredible. I had no idea you did the whole MMA thing. You'd get on really well with Max Moskowitz then, because he kind of did the same. His podcast started off talking about the sort of fight scene in MMA. Wow, that's interesting, man.
Yep.
Damn. So
I love Max too. I'd love to have him.
I want to get into your military career, but I do have a little surprise for you.
Oh.
Are you ready?
I'm ready, brother. Let's see what we got. Oh! What's going on, Nathan? Yeah, okay.
I think I can't.
What's up, guys?
Whoa,
there he is. Nathan, thank you so much for doing this. I wanted to surprise DJ with a little.
You're playing my own games against me. This is my game. I'm the one that surprises people, but turnabout is fair play, right, Vinnie?
Hey, it's all fun and games sometimes in this thing. Well, Nathan,
it's our show now,
can't.
Vinnie. It's our show.
Yeah,
now,
man.
Vinnie. Yeah.
But Nathan, you can't stay all night, so
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan.
But yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for jumping in, because your guys' show is incredible. So what we'll do is, DJ, if we can talk about the podcast now, you and Nathan, and then we can get back to your kind of military stuff when Nathan has to leave. But so how did you two guys meet? Who decided first they wanted to do a podcast based around this subject, and like, where did it spring from?
So I had decided that I was going to switch over to UFOs. I hadn't switched the name yet, but I had Andy on. Andy's my first friend in the community, and we started to communicate over WhatsApp and call one another, so on and so forth. And then I had him on one day. The second time I had him on, I think I had him on. I had Luis on, so I had a couple, the big guys right away, and then Nathan called in. And when Nathan called in and asked a question to Andy, I think Andy and I were kind of just like, I'm going to look at you, Vinny. That's kind of like one of these. I'm like, do you hear this guy? I'm like, mate, I'm like, Nathan, you know, it was great having you on. I'm going to DM you and we're going to talk. Immediately, I'm DMing this guy and said it was amazing. I want to have you on again. So
Wow.
I said, will you be my co-host for the next episode? So we started doing that. And then finally, it came around. I said, you know, I'd like to, you know, you to be my co-host, do a show together. And he came up with Calling All Beings. I came up with a really stupid name, and it turned out that it was brilliant. So there he is. The guy's amazing. He's made my he's everything that I'm not. He's smart in the areas where I'm not. He cares about people and loves people the same way that I do, and that's where we have a connection. We like to see people happy, and we like to make them feel well about what they're doing with us.
Nice, man. Let's hear your side of things, Nathan.
Yeah, it's nothing like that. Everything he just said is totally no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, exactly as he described. And I think you know, DJ is the kind of guy that has your back all the time, 100% of the way, all the time. And I identified with that right away. And the fact that he was so interested in kind of getting this going, it's something that I always wanted to do, but didn't really have the sort of guts to take that first step. He'd already been out there doing his thing, and you know, basically just said, "Hey, come with me." You know, like reached his hand back, "Come with me, we'll do this." I'm like, "All right, well, you know, why not? Let's go." So I started out in UFO Twitter a few years ago, just as a kind of a lurker account, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners, a lot of your listeners, you know, they're just really kind of taking in the content, right? And that's totally fine. I've been again doing that for years. And when I first started getting into sort of putting my foot into the conversation more actively with Andy's show, I was not sort of public facing. I still had just kind of presenting myself as either a voice or an avatar. Didn't go on camera or anything. And you know, DJ was sort of like suddenly like, "All right, now let's you know, come on, like come outside and play." And so eventually, you know, I did, and here I am. I wanted to echo kind of what he said, that you know, one of the missions of our show is to have fun first and foremost, but secondly, I think elevate this conversation in a way that makes everybody feel welcome. And you know, we have, I think, Vinny, I've watched your show, and I feel like you share a similar passion, you know, for that. The way in which you do outreach, the way that you kind of bring people into your community, the way that you interact on Twitter. I mean, it's just obvious, I think, to us, you know, that you're a kindred spirit in that regard, because at the end of the day, this is a conversation that involves all of us. And I think we don't look at this as necessarily as like purely entertainment. We look at our show as a means to have a conversation. And Twitter, as great as it is, isn't really the best place for a conversation. You know, sniping on Twitter might feel good, but it doesn't really help us, I think, come to a better understanding and ultimately get closer to figuring out what this actually is.
Yeah, well said, man. I completely agree. And I do feel like I am a kindred spirit, you know. There's too much negativity and, you know, in this subject where there is really no answers.
Yeah.
But so many people find aggression when there's disagreements in opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to meet people like both of you guys who on Twitter especially just give off that really nice, welcoming vibe that really just makes you feel like you have friends on that space, on that platform, you know. So I have to thank you both for that. But Nathan, one thing about you that I really am aware of is that you've been you really know your stuff. You ask a lot of questions. I know you've been following Andy and Dan at That UFO Podcast for a while.
Right.
And it's funny because I just recorded an episode with them before this for
nice.
the new KGRA show, and I think you even had a question in there. So yeah, I hope I'm saying this now, but when you listen, some other people listen to it later in the week, it might make sense. So I hope I did your question justice. I'm still not used to all this recording stuff. So,
right. Nice. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it.
I've been a part of their group for a little while, and of course was drawn to Andy, and many of the same reasons why, you know, I'm drawn to DJ, drawn to you. They do a great job of hosting that conversation, asking good questions, and really getting people thinking in a way that I think moves this conversation forward, as opposed to, just kind of pulls out all the worst elements of people.
Yeah, completely. And DJs, I'm sorry, this is your interview, but I'm going to ask
No.
Nathan one more big question. Nathan,
I appreciate it. I love Nathan, and he's going to be a huge person in this community. He
yeah,
really is.
I agree. But Nathan, I have to ask, have
Sure.
you ever had a sighting or an experience?
No, I haven't. And this is sort of in part, I guess, what drives me to this subject to begin with. So I know people are driven to it because they've had a sighting. I'm driven to it because I haven't.
I'm the same.
I grew up in a very religious kind of household. Not a, I have to kind of qualify that statement. I think a lot of people, when they think about religion, particularly religion in America, they have a very sort of monolithic view of what that might look like. But the house that I grew up in was very sort of academically open-minded. So even though I had a strong religious kind of context, I was encouraged to explore and ask questions and be curious and have doubts and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I grew up with a strong affinity for religion and religious tradition and all that kind of thing, and wanted a connection, wanted a very spiritual connection with those greater things. As I grew older and pursued that in an academic way, I kind of came to this place where I was like, you know what, I'm in this for the knowledge, for the academics, for the philosophy of it, more so than I'm in it for the faith aspect of it, for the belief aspect of it. And so even though I went to school to study this kind of stuff, I never really made much out of that, and kind of turned away from those beliefs and faith concepts in my adult life. This subject, ironically, has brought me back to being more sort of open to the mystical, to the unknown. There was definitely a period of my life, a good chunk of it, where I was more of an atheist, more of an agnostic. Really downplayed a lot of the historical kind of mystical things in Christianity or whatnot. Said, all that's just kind of metaphor, or it's it's just embellishment or whatever. But this subject has kind of turned the tables on all of that, and gonna maybe look at all of those things with sort of fresh eyes and say, okay, wait a minute, maybe ancient people weren't just making up stories. Maybe there was something to these sightings and experiences that ties into what we are seeing today with aspects of the phenomenon.
Absolutely, man. Really well said. I could see why you're a natural on a podcast, man.
Heart bubble emojis. Every time I listen to this man talk, heart bubble emojis are floating above my head.
Amazing.
We're going to have a divinity roundtable, Vin. I hate to say Vin twice in the same sentence, but I did. We're going to have a divinity roundtable with Nathan, Dr. Diana Pasulka, and UFO Twitter's own Exo Academian.
Wow.
And both Exo and Nathan and Dr. Pasulka obviously have all been through the master's level in religion and higher in her case. So I'm going to be there like this, Vin.
Dude, I know what you mean. I'm actually reading her book, American Cosmic, at the moment.
So good.
I spoke to her via email briefly a couple of weeks ago, obviously trying to get her onto the show. It will happen, hopefully this side of Christmas. But this is a new aspect of the phenomena and the relation to Christianity and all religions in a way that I've just started to think about and touch upon. So very interested to see that aspect. And it's kind of a little segue into something I wanted to talk about with DJ tonight. But Nathan, while you're here, last night we saw the Our Future in Space forum. So, I mean, it was very religious based when you're looking at the place that it was set in and some of the people there doing the introductions and the speaking and that. Do you think that there is kind of some acceptance where this is all coming together, where, all religions can live alongside the possibility of, extraterrestrial life and things outside of the cosmos and maybe becoming closer together in the future? Either of you can answer that as well.
This is going to save Nathan a phone call where I call him and ask him this question. So go ahead, Nathan.
I really enjoyed what we watched last night. For a number of reasons, but the way that I think about this question is from the standpoint of story. So human beings, we navigate our lives through stories. We situate our present in a story. I came from these parents in this town, and I do this, and I'm going to be doing this in the future. Those are my hopes and dreams. In the past, in human past, we've had lots of different stories on the planet that have organized our lives and organized our societies in really complex ways. They've allowed us to kind of level up. They've been an operating system, like a software, that have leveled up our cultures to accomplishing some amazing things. But as we moved into the 20th century and in the 21st century now, we've kind of abandoned and jettisoned those ancient stories, and the fall off rate of belief in those ancient stories is only increasing over time as we have kind of moved towards a scientism of faith in our science. And we have good reason to have faith in our science. Our science has accomplished a lot, a great deal. At the same time, I think we find that while it does a lot for us, it doesn't sort of satisfy the deeper needs of the human condition, right? And so this subject, for me, what it presents is an opportunity for us to not only learn more about the nature of reality, but find a story that is more powerful than the stories that we have left behind us. A story that is going to take our human civilization, not just our small little pockets of civilization, but our entire world civilization, to another place that we haven't been before. And last night, I think, was a great illustration of how that is achievable. I think a lot of people resonated with that sort of dialogue, in part because of where they held it. And I know there are a lot of conflicting opinions about that at the same time, but there's something to be said for having a conversation in a space that is designed around an experience or a feeling. And cathedrals are literally designed, when you walk in the doors of a cathedral, your eyes are going to go to the ceiling. Like it is a space that is designed to bring space into your life, like to elevate your mind and consciousness to this broader experience. What a perfect place to have that conversation, to have the conversation about space and how the future of humanity in space, what that means for all of us. Like I know people think like, oh, like this is a weird sort of merger of state and religion, but really I see it more as a jumping off point. It's like we're kind of passing the baton, from the old story to the new, and it's going to have to take place at this sort of transitional space.
DJ.
And what's interesting, if you read Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, see, Nathan thought I didn't read books, but if you read that, it really does take, other than Clifford the Big Red Dog. I have read others.
I love this. Yeah,
it's a great dog, great book. But no, when you read Pillars of the Earth, it does take you structurally inside a church, and you can see and feel exactly what Nathan was talking about when they described the construction of a cathedral, how it's built, how you're supposed to feel. Like he said, when you walk in and your eyes go up, and there's some very specific, and I think the character's name was Tom Builder. Obviously, in England, that's what his name would have been back then, because he was a church builder. He had
Sure.
the square and all those different tools that a mason would have.
Yeah.
So anyway, really fascinating. But relative to the discussion of it, what I find interesting about it is that religions haven't, in yoga, we talk about making space. So it's like, I have a belief system, but Nathan's going to come up outside me, and I need to create space that Nathan can get in there with his belief system. And I can say, maybe look at that belief system and go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I got to, if not take it in whole, in part, into my thinking. And religiously, I went to my wife's baptism, and all they were singing about, it was like a month or two ago, Nathan remembers that. And they're singing about our God is the number one God and all this kind of stuff. And I'm kind of just like, oh man, I hate that kind of talk. Our God is the number one God. I would never say that to somebody who's Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist or from another faith. And so it will be interesting if UFOs is an area where some of the theologians are going to create space. They might not have wanted to create space for Islam or for Judaism or Catholicism, but maybe this new offshoot, they're going to create space to let that get in there. And I think that'll be fascinating if they do that, which they haven't done for traditionally other systems of belief.
Well said, man. Love that.
Yeah,
What did you think? What did either of you think about the fact, going into the whole religious platform that they were in, the building and all that religious symbolism that was around them? And then we had D&I Avril Haines opening up, talking about UAP. I mean, I stayed up late. It was like gone midnight. I had to. And it even though it didn't go in depth and we didn't hear it or learn anything new, it's still in a way blew my mind because of what it represented. Did you guys get anything like that from it as well? Or is it just me?
No, I think so for sure. I think the symbolism of a place like that, it forces the participant, it puts the participant on their heels. I would say that. So, because most people are not comfortable in a space like that. Now, Avril Haines is comfortable being in public. She's comfortable speaking about her area of specialty. She wouldn't be where she was if she couldn't do those kinds of things. But even the powerful are made to feel low in a space like that. And that is intentional. Like even the priests or whoever that spend a lot of their time there, they also feel small in a space like that. And so I think it is a great sort of unifying. It has a force where it sort of unifies or flattens the human experience, and it sort of strips away the titles. Even though these people are on stage, and we know they're very elevated people in their professions, it sort of brings them low to the status of the congregation. They're the people who came to be there for that talk. And so when you're doing that, when the space is doing that, it also puts the speakers in a place where they then have to think of, okay, wait a minute, I'm talking about this important thing, but it impacts me on a personal level, not on a state level, programmatic level. How does it impact me as a person? And I think Avril, she had her talking points, but you could see that I didn't think she was really that either prepared or that comfortable talking about the subject. And I know a lot of people read into the reasons why, but I still think that this topic is destabilizing. Even if you haven't come to your conclusions, it destabilizes your long-held beliefs.
Which is why a lot of people feel so much more comfortable attributing when they see something like a Tic Tac to say, oh, it's human, because they can contextualize it. I feel safe. I know what it is. I know who's operating it, or tangentially who's probably operating it. Okay, I don't have to worry about it's some intelligence that I have no idea what it's capable of or what its intentions are. So
Right.
I'm going to defend to the hilt what makes me feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
No, but that's good. I think
Very good.
people
And
should.
and I want to say I didn't see Avril, so I can't speak to that. I caught it afterward, so I can't comment. But the way you contextualized it, both of you, was what I would get from how I would think that she would react to being in a space like that, and probably not wanting to spill all the beans, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Well, look, guys, I have to run. So Vinny and DJ, thank you guys for letting me join this conversation, and hopefully we'll get to do this again sometime.
On our show?
Man.
Yes,
On our show,
absolutely.
Vinny?
Absolutely.
Anytime,
Shameless ploy. We're putting in a position where you can't say no, or the audience will think you're a big giant.
We'll just do a show swap. We've been running his show now. He'll run our show. So.
Yeah.
Hey,
I mean,
there we go.
I wanted Nathan to bum rush in, so I don't know if you had the same idea, but I had already sent him the Zoom link.
Yeah, no,
really?
he reached out to me.
Yes, I did.
We set this up. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
great
I
seeing
wanted
you guys.
we wanted to see if we could surprise you, but you surprised me. As I said, turnabout is fair play. So.
Absolutely, man. Nathan, thank you so much,
Yes.
brother,
Bye,
man.
Nathan.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Heart
See you
bubble
again soon.
emojis. Heart bubble emojis. Bye, Nathan.
That was awesome, man.
Yeah. It's not easy being a hard ass military guy when you're talking about heart bubble emojis, but you know what? I'm a would-be man for all seasons. So
Hey, I love it, man. Everyone's, I love that you've got so much depth of character. I love it, absolutely. Ben, you talk about military guy. Let's talk about that. Where did that all start? What made you decide? Where were you at in your life when you just like, you know what, I'm going to join the military?
real quickly, just to give you a little bit of background, I was a special ed kid. So shout out to all you UFO fans out there, either in the UK or US that are watching Vinnie. And if you were a kid that was a special ed kid that was told you're not smart, you're dumb, you should do job X because you're probably not capable of Y, I'm you. And I'm here to tell you it's all BS. You really can just go for it and decide you're going to put yourself out there, and you can go and find your dream like I did. And your dream can be far grander than mine was. So basically, I was that kid, special ed kid, went off to college, decided that I wanted to play football without any knowledge of football or having ever played the game. And after 1 year of wrestling in high school, I said, well, if I did that, I should be able to do this. So I tried out for football, lied to the coaches that earned me a tryout. And out of about 8 or 10 of us, 4 of us made the team. And I took that afterward. My father kind of like ripped me out of college after a pretty successful first year in the classroom and on the field. I left there believing that I could really do something that I had never done, and that was achieve academically and play a sport, like a college type sport. And I proved to myself that I could do that, because I even got invited back for the next season to come back to training camp. And that's when my father told me, oh, by the way, I'm moving to Italy. You're not going back. See you later. It's been real.
Wow.
And that was the end of my college career, my dream. So it was a couple of years later, through working at the mall and moving from Florida to New York, I was working for the state of New York. I had a really good job with a 401k and all that neat stuff. And I said, you know what? I'd like to serve. And I went to speak to a recruiter about being a reservist, a weekend warrior. And he said, well, I recruit for active duty. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, sure. I said, if I could do college and the classroom and football, I should be able to do this. So next thing you know, I was headed off to basic training 2 months later, and said goodbye to my safe job in New York. And I did jet engine mechanics for about 8 years. And then I decided that I'd always been interested in flying since I was a little boy. So I went and got my pilot's license, and that took me into this job in the Air Force where you could be an enlisted cat like me, but still be in the flight deck, right in between the pilots, involved in all the action, but not having my hand on the controls as flight engineer. And that was the beginning.
So did you get your pilot's license privately, separately from that? That's incredible.
Just like Mick West. Jazz hands, Mick. Jazz hands. Yeah. And as I said, it was exponentially easier getting my pilot's license than it ever was being a flight engineer in the Air Force, by 100-fold.
Wow, that is incredible, man. I have so much respect for that.
It was fun. I love it. I love flying.
So what happened next? Were you just not satisfied being in that engineer role? Did you want to be that person in the seat with the hands on the controls?
Well, as an enlisted man, you couldn't. So at the time, I was going to school, working on becoming an officer, and then thinking about becoming a pilot. And when I actually had to do some interviews to get this flight engineer job, and I was like, man, when it came up, I said, I'm going to take it. And so I became a flight engineer, went off to school. And then I did about 2 years of flying C-130s, and I came back from Afghanistan, the initial September 11th stuff, and they said, Operation Enduring Freedom, and they said, hey, we have an opportunity in special ops down at Herbert Field in Florida, flying Combat Talon 2s. And I was like, I was already a mechanic on Combat Talon 2s, so I knew what it looked like, but I didn't have any idea what they did when they took off. I just knew they took off, did something, came back. So I grabbed that opportunity, went to Albuquerque where Mr. Doty's at, took 6 months of school there, sitting in class there was a Rhodes Scholar in my class. Basically, you're not kind of like a flight engineer going to school with flight engineers. You're a flight engineer going to school with a crew. So you have 2 pilots, a navigator, an electronic warfare officer, which is also a navigator, but with some other skills that he uses, and 2 loadmasters. So, which are the guys that deal with all the special op forces in the back, bring them on, bring them off, open the door so they can jump, airdrop supplies. The loadmasters are in the back doing all of that. They interface with the SEALs and the Army SOF and the Marine Corps Raiders, etc. Or in some cases, British, SAS guys or whoever we happen to be working with.
Right.
So it's not only U.S.
Sure.
So I sat in class with all these guys and was like, holy, these guys are so smart. And I really had to put a lot in to learn how they all the stuff that the airplane had that my past airplane looked just like it, but didn't have all this gadgetry and terrain following radar that Graham will tell you all about probably, and all this other stuff that, hey, Graham, what's up, Graham Rendell? So, so yeah, it had all the kinds of neat stuff on it. So I got through that, and then I spent the rest of my career in special ops from there, flying the Combat Talent 2, my fave. And then, obviously, as you wrote on there, the MC-1, the Combat Spear MC-130W, and then the AC-130W gunship. And I got a good breadth, but my favorite was flying around the UK and the Talent 2. So,
wow, that's amazing, man. That really
great,
is.
Man.
So during all this time when you're getting familiar with your crewmates and stuff, did the UFO subject come up very often or at all?
Oh God. So I've told people this was never going to come up, man. This was never going to come up in an earnest conversation. I have reached back to one of my another flight engineer who told me about an experience that he had in Afghanistan, ironically, where he and the pilot saw one. But this was never going to come up, because if someone would have said, DJ's talking about UFOs, literally you could get sent to the flight doc and then a psychologist. Wow. Your name could disappear from the flight schedule. And the whole thing was, whatever I got to do to be on the flying schedule, I want to do. I don't want to be sick. I don't want to get hurt. Anything that keeps you from flying is an absolute no-no.
No, I get you. Listen, DJ, I'm losing your picture a little bit, man. I don't know if you're having any issues your end that you can see.
No, but I can go out and switch nets and come back. Everything looks perfect on my end, but if you need me to go out and come back, I will.
That'd be good, man. I'm not sure. Okay. I'll check with everyone in the chat while you do that, just because.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
Can anyone in the chat let me know if Nathan's jumping around? Sorry, not Nathan. If DJ is skipping around for you as well, because I was having difficulty there with a lot of glitching. And while we're here, let's say hello to everyone. Benji, Arlene, Chris MS, Mr. Calhoun, Blurry. Oh, let me just. I think we had a new member as well. I got to give a shout out to the members. Thank you so much for your support. Yeah, Marco Negri, thank you so much for becoming a member, man. It really means a lot. How is everyone? Oh, Chris Walford, good to see Chris, Lara. Oh, look, everyone's in here. I think I saw Dave. Were you in here, Dave? Dave Partridge. Ah, Sean, Mr. Sean Rush, witness citizen in the house. Arno's in here. Ethereal. Good to see everyone. Let me just see. Sound is clear on my end. Did anyone have any? Oh, yeah. Freezy and jumpy. Thank you, Arlene. Yeah, it happens sometimes. Everything looks good, like of me from my end, but you never quite know where the issue lies. It could have been my connection, or he's not come back in yet. Sean, I can join if you want. Give me a couple of minutes. If he doesn't jump back in, that'd be amazing. I'm sure he knows what he's doing. He runs a show. So how's everyone today? Let's get up in the chat. What did everyone else catch the Our Future in Space forum last night? Any thoughts on that? Any questions you want to ask DJ as well, whether it be related to his military service, to his UFO sighting, yeah, anything. Hey, I think he's just come back.
I'm back, brother. Yeah, Vinnie. Party people, put your hands together for Sheffield's own Mr. Vinnie Adams. Yes. Can I get a witness? All right,
amazing.
There we go.
All right, man. You're looking better. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
You're looking better. I'll let you know if it happens again. But
the reason I'm looking better is for what you're about to get. I'm going to send you a free can of DJ Skincare, organic skincare formula, man. Okay? You're going to get some of that, and we'll get you some African black soap too, man. We're going to take care of you, Vinny. All right.
Man, you're so kind. Thank you so much, brother. Man.
made by these hands, jazz hands. Mick, what's
You're gonna
up,
make me
man?
look younger,
Jazz
yeah?
hands, Mick. Yeah, you're gonna look at 54, man. You're gonna look like me.
Damn.
Actually, no, I don't want to damn you like that. So anyway, go ahead.
No, I've never. You're not 54, are you?
I am, brother.
No way.
1967 model, man. Yeah, I have no energy. You can tell.
Bro, you never cease to amaze me, man.
Thank
Wow.
you, brother.
So where were we, man? Yeah, I think I was talking about the possibility of conversations on UFOs within you and your brothers in service.
Yeah, it didn't happen. It would have been extremely. I would have been scared to do it. I didn't even get comfortable. I'm scared now doing it at work. So then it wasn't gonna. I would never talk to my boss about it. Now, no way. No way. Only people that are into the topic, and I'm really trying to keep it quiet because I really don't want to end up having people at work see me on YouTube or on podcast and what their preconceptions might be about UFO people, which we're all battling with. You are too, probably to an extent.
To an extent, yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
But is your current job military related?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
I understand that. I just wasn't sure if you'd seen any kind of stigma dropping in the last few years, with everything that happened in 2017 and the kind of Navy reporting system a year or two later. No effect?
I think it's too soon at this point, but I will tell you in general terms, and I think I've said this to you privately, but I'll say it. The DoD is taking this very, very seriously. I'm just going to leave it at that. I've read things. They're taking it very, very seriously. And the Navy's leading the way, but the Air Force is also taking it very seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people have known that the Air Force have taken it serious for a very long time, but more in the background and very, very hidden.
But the reporting aspect of it is what I'm
Right.
is what I'm getting at. The reporting
Okay.
aspect of it.
Oh,
is
right.
Because I had one person come on our podcast and tell me, which was interesting, that this person was telling me what the Air Force is being briefed about. And I go, oh, that's interesting. I work there. I'm glad this person who doesn't work there knows. And that wasn't accurate. There is a reporting procedure now. Again, I think the Navy leads the way, but this gets to a larger discussion, Vinny, that I try to have on Spaces, and I'll try to have it here real quickly.
Right.
What do you understand the mission of the Air Force to be? You, Mr. Adams.
I mean, I suppose
That's different than the Navy. To make it to just frame it, bring that frame in a little closer. That would be different than the Navy.
that's a very hard question for me because I would have just put military under the DoD as a defense organization. I suppose Air Force nowadays, to me, would probably be not only the skies but space as well.
Yes, which actually would be a different discussion in a way, because then we'd be getting into, let's just call it competition with China and Russia. It's kind of a different discussion. But let's just talk about the skies, because you mentioned skies. So we have one organization that is able to project power, air and sea power around the world.
Right.
They're able to bring an aircraft carrier 12 miles off the coast, which is international waters, of any country and project air power. And you know that they're there. You can't have a group of pirates there. They can keep an area where oil would be perhaps coming out of the Persian Gulf. They could keep something like that safe and deter any aggression against the distribution of global oil. But then you have this other organization called the Air Force, and the Air Force is charged with dominating, controlling, protecting the skies of the United States of America, all 50 states. When was the last attack that occurred from the air on the United States?
I'm going to obviously go 9/11.
Okay, but that was not an attack, as it were. It was a civilian airliner being commandeered and steered into a building. So that could happen tomorrow if you could penetrate that cockpit door or get some. I mean, that could happen in any country.
So do you
But-
mean like an overseas attack
Exactly,
from a foreign
exactly,
nation, adversarial? Do you know what? I couldn't tell you. Could it be Pearl Harbor?
That's right, December 7th, 1941. And if you want to say the continental U.S., I'd say it's never happened in the history of air power. So when you talk about there are craft that are in our skies that aren't necessarily flying, which actually brings us into another discussion, and Andy's actually really brilliant at this one, but they're moving through they're moving through our sky, but they're not flying the way Bernoulli's theorem and Newton's first and third laws of motion, how we describe flying,
Right.
Newtonian physics. So with that, this organization, is it in their interest to say, yeah, hey, Vin, this is what's going on, brother. We have some craft flying around pretty much wherever they want. We have no control over it. We can't do anything about it, but don't worry. Does that make sense? I mean,
No, of course not.
so it's not in their interest, to say that. But then when we go to so I disagree with how this has been handled and that it hasn't been disclosed. I disagree with Roswell because Roswell is a very simple mathematical equation almost. Well, I shouldn't say it's a mathematical equation, but you can look at it the way an equation, this plus this equals this.
Right.
But it's not mathematical in the truest sense of the word. But if the Army Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, and Major Jesse Marcel comes out one day and says, we captured a flying disc at Roswell, and then 24 hours later say, oh, it wasn't that. It was a flying balloon. Or it was a Mylar weather balloon. So which is the one? Would you lie about it being the flying disc, or does it make more sense to lie the second time about what it was?
Well, neither are good. I don't know which is worse or better in any respects. And we know they did it a third and possibly even a fourth time.
Fourth time, yeah. So, but if you're going to make up a lie, it's not going to be the fantastic thing that the base public affairs officer, Major Marcel, put out, the first thing. It's going to be the second thing when they go, what the are you doing, Marcel? You need to take that down, and we're going to put out a different story. And the reason you know that the second story isn't true, because it doesn't make sense. You don't send deuce and a halves full of guys out to court 95 miles to this guy's ranch and go, get the police tape out, string it all around. We're not getting anybody within 10 miles of this place for a weather balloon. You collect it up and go, let's head back to base, guys, and see if we can grab a good burrito on the way.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But you would do that if you had something that was fantastic that you did not want people to know about, because it doesn't fit the narrative of there's something flying that we don't control. So I understand, while I disagree with what they did, I understand what they did and why they did it. And we should be able to contextualize that. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. The Navy doesn't have that responsibility.
Yeah.
That's not their charge.
No, absolutely, man. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Man. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, you're making me think too much. And when I'm doing a show, I shouldn't be thinking. I should just be reading out questions and stuff. But I like that. Yeah, it's a good breakdown.
Very simple. If it doesn't make sense, Judge Judy says this all the time. If the story of Roswell, if it doesn't make sense, it's because it's not true.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the threat narrative and the airspace hazards and why it's not just a scare tactic by the government? Or maybe you think it is. I shouldn't say it like that. Oh, cool.
No,
okay.
it's not a scare tactic. Anytime. So when you're in your working airspace, so the Navy is having an existential issue with something that Ryan Graves said was in our training areas, which, by the way, that training area moves as the carrier group moves. That training area is not static, as that thing's moving at 17 knots or whatever the hell those things move at. So these things are in our training areas every day. We could hit one. One of them split a flight of two. We've all heard that story from Lou, that it nearly collided. They had a flight of two, and they had to brake right and left to open up a space for one of those circling those orbs inside a cube to pass through the middle. So would that result in a Class A accident where we hit it and all of a sudden now we have wings flying off and a pilot who's falling to his death? Maybe, but it is an existential problem. Do I think that they're necessarily a threat? I would kind of go with the Anjali narrative. Maybe some of them are, some of them aren't. We don't know. There's so much that, so I even though I'm a yogi, how can I say they're all love and light when I don't know? How could you know that? Some of them maybe. Some of them may have our best interests at heart and want to shepherd us toward actually taking good care of this planet and killing off the fossil fuels and starting to find a better way to power ourselves and consume food and power vehicles. And then there's some of them that might say, you know what, that's a great resource down there. They're like 90% water. Let's go take this thing eventually when we're ready. So
yeah,
the answer is we don't know. But as Lou said, and I hate to parrot Lou, but he makes a lot of sense. Like I hate to repeat the same narratives that he does, but if it's there and we don't know what it is and we don't know what its intentions are, that means it's not a dynamic threat in every instance, but it's a potential threat like potential energy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just wanted to see where you stood on that, and I'm happy to hear how you said it. I've got a couple more comments saying you're jumping and freezing a bit. There probably isn't much more we can do, so I think people might just have to put up with it. I'm sorry.
Sorry, amigos.
Nah, it's all good, man. Sean, witness citizen in the house, unless it was foreign. Now, yeah, I think you've got a little take on that concept as well, haven't you?
Well, Lou also, he talks about they've been seeing these things since the 40s, these cylindrical objects that operate in very the same manner as the Tic Tac. In my opinion, going with Dave Fravor, reading the narratives that, or listening to the narratives or the anecdotes relayed by Kevin Day, by Gary, by Sean, who was looking through the big eyes on the deck, by the E2 Hawkeye folks, the radar operators, that has this thing on multiple sensors doing this thing. So I don't believe that. Okay, let's say for a second, Vinny, let's entertain the thought of in a laboratory somewhere in the United States or in the world that somebody is able to somehow get something to produce an anti-gravitational property, and they're able to get it to rise and fall. They're able to introduce electricity or plasma or something there, and they're able to get it to move and then fall down. Is that possible? Certainly. That could be a thing. But operating in a tactical engagement against an FA-18 out over the water in concert with a Top Gun pilot and mimicking his maneuvers, that's a whole different animal.
And you said something to me before we actually came on live about you've seen all sorts of aircraft and where they come from, how they're built and stuff like that. And you think, do you remember that conversation about how it's just such a far leap going back, with the knowledge of flight? Yes.
I might have to be quiet, Juicy. My cat's in here. So Juicy. All right. So when you look at the Wright brothers, and people will say, well, the Wright brother. Well, they don't talk about the Wright brothers. They'll talk about, well, look at the stealth fighter, man. That thing was at Area 51, and we didn't even know about it. And all of a sudden, it's out there and it's bombing in the first Gulf War. Okay, that's great. The stealth fighter flies the exact same way as the Wright flyer did in 1903 in Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. It's the exact same. It's Bernoulli's theorem. It's Newtonian physics. It's those wing forms that driving it forward create lift, and then those control surfaces that are able to make us pitch, roll, yaw, dive, all these sorts of things, right? The 6 degrees of freedom that we talk about. And that hasn't changed. And the aircraft that we're flying today still fly with the exact same concepts. Whereas if I were to say to you, Vinny, we had the SR-71 that made its first flight in 1964. How long do you think it took before the European consortium flew the SST, the supersonic transport?
I don't know, man. I'm not familiar with the SST.
5 years.
Really?
5 years until the Concorde flew. They was doing that London and New York, Paris and New York flight in 3 hours or whatever the hell it was.
Sure.
So
yeah.
5 years, we made it from coming out of Area 51 and coming out of test and into operational flight wherever they were stationed, Okinawa and some other places, California, so on and so forth.
Is this going from the Oxcart to operational SR-71s from the 60s? Because I know it started out as CIA Oxcart, didn't it?
I don't know. I know the first flight that was announced was 64.
Right.
And so I don't know. I mean, it probably started developing in 58, 59, and 60, and so on and so forth, to be able to get the materials. The jet engine at Supersonic, it has a little bit of a different theory that it worked on from way back when I went to jet engine school. And the materials to withstand the heat and all this sort of thing, right? So 5 years later, you have the SST that's also flying supersonic. So what happens is the military will make something, and then you'll see how it'll transfer into the civilian world, or it will inform other technologies that the military is using. This is so ridiculous because we haven't moved anywhere. We still need ailerons, rudders to steer, ailerons to roll, elevators to pitch, right? We still need all these exact same flight control surfaces to fly. And even a helicopter, what does the FAA or the RAE call helicopters? Rotary wing. Because what shape is that rotor blade? It's the shape of a wing. So now we pitch that blade, sure, but still it's designed to create lift just as it is as a wing form, that teardrop shape. I'm not going to get into Bernoulli's theorem on here and how it works with velocity increase and pressure decreases, that basically the air that, the shape of the wing, the air that goes over the wing travels faster than the air that goes under the wing. That creates a low pressure area on top of the wing, and there you have lift.
Absolutely.
The F-35 flies exactly like that. And the aircraft, so if this thing was flying around in 2004 like that, with no sign of propulsion, no control surfaces to steer with, able to jam radar, but no visible emitters on the outside of this craft, okay? So we're looking at it, and I don't see emitters, but when I see a British Tornado, or I see an F-35 or an F-22 or a Sukhoi 27 or Sukhoi 29, I know what the emitters look like to jam radar. But yet, this thing doesn't have any of that. 17 years ago. and
sorry, I was just going to say, you had a top secret SCI clearance as well. Do you think you would have heard things in back channels if they were doing things behind the scenes?
No, I wouldn't have heard anything about it because I didn't have a need to know. And Lewis has told you guys about that you can have the clearance. I could have a clearance that I could have gotten read into that, but I missed that final ingredient necessary for me to know about a technology like that, was the need to know. Whereas if I were to go over to Area 51 and say, hey guys, do you need to know what's going on with us in Joint Special Operations and how we're interacting with certain tier one ground forces that we don't even need to name? And they would say, no, they don't have a need to know about that. They might have the clearance to know about it, but they don't have a need to know, which is how they were able to obfuscate things from Lou and his team, because somebody has decided there are programs out there and there are things out there that he didn't need to know about, which is unfortunate because he did need to know. So the whole construct, Vinny, is, and we've talked about this on Spaces before. Are there any reports of Concorde piloting UFOs? Wonder, given it was supersonic aircraft, and others would be a little bit curious. Yeah, the problem is that the Concorde made an enormous amount of noise. There was a lot of noise abatement things that were going on at the time coming into JFK and LaGuardia. And one of the things that separates UAP from aircraft is there's an enormous amount of noise. And now we have something that makes no noise and doesn't have an IR signature. And that absolutely blows my mind. Also, it's omnidirectional. So with us, we basically take an aircraft engine and we truss mount it inside of a wing and we bolt it. And then what happens is as the aircraft pushes and comes forward, it pulls the aircraft through space. Essentially, it's bolted on the front The trusses are in the wing, and you bolt the engine to those trusses. So it's monodirectional. Now, the thrust might vector and help you steer it, but it's monodirectional. This Tic Tac thing is omnidirectional. It could go up at the same velocity, down at the same velocity. So it's able to project propulsion in any direction it wants at just a blink of an eye and come to a stop. And anybody inside would absolutely be collapsed. It would look like you took the ladle at Domino's Pizza and took that pizza sauce and slathered it against the wall.
I like
Not
the
that
analogy.
I've done that.
No, I like the analogy. That's a good one, man. Well, listen, we've just about hit the hour mark. That has flown by, man.
It has.
Listen, let's do this again sometime, man. Definitely
you,
have
Vin.
to do this again, man.
It
It's a shame that you're blurring a bit tonight. That's really, everyone wants to see your beautiful face, man. What can I say?
What, I have a face for radio. Now, Vinnie, on the other hand, this is a handsome devil. He knows how to skateboard. Vin, but you're going to come on Calling All Beings. We're going to cut it up.
Absolutely. Anytime, man.
We're
Just say
do
the
it.
word. Absolutely, brother. Listen, before you go, man, tell everyone where they can find you, follow you, support you, and all that good stuff.
Okay, so our YouTube is Calling All Beings, and we have also a show Twitter that's called Calling Beings, at Calling Beings, and then if you, me myself, am at call_all_beings. So we'd be honored to have you. Nathan is brilliant. The people that know me, there's a lot more people that are going to know Nathan because he's not going to annoy you as much as I do. And I didn't even get through the navigation of the Tic Tac compared to how we GPS navigate, how we use traffic collision. There's so many aspects of flight that this thing can do that I know the technologies that we're buying and using, that I know what we're buying right now, and they're nowhere close to this. So that's how I would bet my life against somebody who says this is definitely human tech. I'd bet my life on it. It's not 21st century contemporary humans. Maybe your future us, I could totally believe it.
Dude, we've got to do part two. We've got to do part two. I'll DM you after or tomorrow, and we'll get that set up, man. Because that'll be fantastic.
You're coming on Calling All Beings, mate. You are.
Dude, we got to get
Adams.
Yes, mate. I cannot wait. I really can't. That'll be
Thank
fantastic.
you, brother. It's an honor to speak with you.
Hey, it means so much to me. Thank you for being such a good friend. And I appreciate you so much in this crazy world that we're all a part of. So yeah, hang about. We'll say goodbye to everyone here, and we'll have a little debrief after the fact. Okay. But let's just say thank you to everybody in the live chat. I appreciate every single one of you. You're all just consistently supporting this channel, and for anybody new, you are so welcome. And I appreciate every single comment, every question, and just everything. So yeah, guys, until next time, we will see you later.
Love you. #UFO Twitter.
Woohoo!